Hello, hello, DM Geezer Jim here, starting our read through of Uncaged Faces of Sigil. This is going to be my next little audiobook project on my YouTube channel, so thank you so much for joining us. Oh, excuse me. Similar to the 2024 Dungeon Master's Guide, we're going to read through a section word for word, exactly what's on the page, and then the latter part of the video will discuss, how is this information useful in the cases of this book, Uncaged Faces of Sigil. We're looking directly at non-player characters. So we'll kind of talk about, are they useful, what kind of campaigns, what kind of adventure hooks we can base around them. Forewarning, most of these videos are going to be a little bit more lengthy than the Dungeon Master's Guide series because there's a little bit more to read in this book. Ironically, I got a 132-page second edition book. It's going to have more to read than a 5th edition book with 250 pages. Is what it is. I don't write them. I just read them. Thank you so much for joining. Let's get into the words. Let's get into the reading here. Uncaged Faces of Sigil, being a pageant of the varied citizenry of the city of Doors, including a handful of fiends most true, a clutter of fiends most vile, and a gathering of fellows who trade in both weal and woe as suits them. Credits designer Val R.V. Velez, Michelle Carter, Adrian Hayday, so on and so forth. A lot of the old guys love the Dieter Lizzie art. If you're not familiar with his stuff, you're seeing it in the new Planescape stuff as well. Tony Dieter Lizzie really put his stamp on this series with his artwork. Some people loved it, some people hated it. Can't say that it wasn't at least unique for its time. But yeah, we're going to get into here. Monty Cook, Zeb Cook, Donovan, a lot of the writers that were working at TSR at the time contributed to this book. So, contents on the right side, an introduction. We're going to start here with an introduction. How much can a person see in a single lifetime? How many roses can he smell? How many elegies can he hear? How many mountains can he climb? How many faces can he touch? The multiverse beckons with too many fingers, a bittersweet agony. No mortal being can ever truly know a fraction of its immeasurable treasures, but we in the Society of Sensation have sworn our lives to the attempt, and we desire to fill others with as much as their trembling forms might hold. We collect memories here at the Civic Fest Hall. We buy them from the citizens of Sigil, from the peoples of 100 strange worlds, from the endless stream of planeswalkers who pass through our city between exploits. We store them in enchanted recorder stones that we, and any who desire, may know experiences the like of which were never dreamt possible. I work in our Fest Hall sensoriums, guiding the curious to the sensations they seek, to one of the millions of recorders that hold the accumulated experiences of the planes. The semi-precious stones are not unlike memmers, but whereas those magical skulls merely store and disgorge factual knowledge, a person who holds a recorder feels his body swell at the full sensation of an experience, the full composure of a memory, as if hurled into the reality that swirls within the stone. With a recorder, you can feel the stinging gales of Carcerai flay the skin from your face, feel yourself drown blithely in the silver sea at the base of Mount Celestia, and revel in the secret sins of all those who have traded their memories for gold. That is my greatest pleasure. Every moment I have to spare is spent in the sensoriums absorbing the lifetimes of humans, tieflings, divas, and fiends. Anyone and anything that has ever imparted a piece of themselves to a recorder. I cannot count the number of times I've come back and still the memories lie sleeping in stones so plentiful that I weep at the thought of being unable to try them all. I would smuggle them out of their boxes if I could, ferret them away into my empty home, there to sample them at my leisure. But the enchantments fade have taken from the fest hall, the memories fleeing the recorders like doves from an open cage. Thus the sensoriums have become my world, my all, a silent museum whose forgotten live again in me. I scrape the moss from their white marble busts, exposing the triumph and sorrows, their prides and shame. I feast on that which they would keep hidden, partaking of their secrets if they were laid bare on the illicit pages of stolen diaries. It is far more intoxicating than the diamond meads of Arborea, and infinitely more fulfilling. There is always another monument to be uncovered, another memory to be ingested, and each is as sweet as the last. Here in the womb of the fest hall I lead 1,000 lives except my own. The fantastic city beyond these walls holds many riches indeed, but its sensations are laced with peril, and the denizens of the so-called cage are too eager to bestow upon others the final experience. But here I delight in their secrets too, and I need to reveal nothing of myself, need not put myself at risk. I choose which spirits to unleash from the recorders. I decide which shall live for a precious few moments in my mind, and which shall remain buried in another small box in a mountain of boxes. Perhaps one day I too will sell my memories, my experiences to the fest hall. Perhaps one day others will come to a sensorium, take up my recorder stone, and will know what it is to be me. Perhaps one day another will know more of me than he does of himself, as I do know those contained within the stones. For now, though, I'm content to remain in my lurid museum, the curator of this house of secrets, a sponge in a sea of faces. So what's in this book? Uncaged Faces to Sigils presents 41 non-player characters and groups suitable for encounters and intrigues in Sigil, the wondrous city of doors. It's meant to be read and used by dungeon masters, not players. If you plan on playing a character who might run into one of the folks in this book, don't read any further. Why ruin the surprises in store for your hero? Each non-player character, NPC in the book, is fully developed and ready to be introduced into a Planescape campaign or any other AD&D campaign in which the player characters journey to Sigil or the Plains. See Using the NPCs below for tips on how to work the characters into a game. The NPCs are presented alphabetically on pages 8 through 121. The appendix provides a quick look at 15 additional NPCs, giving DMs even more possibilities for their Planescape adventures. It also contains a 2-page review that sums up the major storylines woven throughout the book and shows how the main characters fit into those diverse plots. Finally, the index gives references for the important people, places, and items mentioned in the NPC entries in the appendix. Reading the entries. Each entry in this volume includes the same basic information about a character: personal history, physical appearance, goals, personality, occupations or activities, favorite hangouts in Sigil, and potential connections or utility to the player characters. But you won't find these topics set apart and labeled within the body of the text. Each entry is meant to be read as a narrative, one that tells you everything you need to know about a character without reducing him, her, or it to a list of facts. Many of the entries are written from the featured character's own point of view, while others present interviews, letters from one person to another, and so on. Of course, while this approach makes for entertaining reading, it can be tricky to pull out the needed facts during gameplay. That's why each entry also contains the quick chant, a separate column of bare-bones information. In each NPC's quick chant, you'll find complete game statistics, including notes on special attacks and defenses. The source in which the character's race, if unusual, is described, the source book to look for their stat block. A few words that define the NPC's personality: special equipment carried, class, factions, granted abilities, and restrictions if they apply, spells and spell-like powers if any, the NPC's usual location in Sigil, tips on role-playing the NPC effectively, tips on how the NPC might act in combat, and references to other characters in the Uncaged book tied to the NPC's histories or goals. A note on the quick chant: not every character ability or power node is available at all times. For example, several characters have access to gate or teleport powers. But in the cage, virtually the only way in or out is through the portals that the Lady of Pain opens and closes at her whim. Therefore, Verdun, page 108, can't use her cubic gate to escape attackers, and Shemeshka the Marauder can't call in Yugoloth enforcers to defend her. But then again, these bloods probably don't need the help. The ties that bind. None of the NPCs at Uncaged are standalone characters. Each is connected in some way to one or more other NPCs in the book, and even to some of the quick sketch characters in the appendix. Of course, you don't need to make use of a character's friends and enemies every time you decide to work that NPC into a playing session, but the connections help enrich each entry and give players a sense that Sigil is a living, breathing place. Some of the ties are light. For example, Sly Nye, the tiefling legal advocate, occasionally argues a case before Judge Gabberslug, a bloated fiend. The two characters figure into each other's entries, but only a peripheral manner. Other ties run much deeper, and the characters cross path in more significant ways. Parak, a Gezerai who bills himself as a trapper of cranium rats, is in reality a servant of the entity called the Us, a hidden pack of rats growing in number and intelligence. Sometimes an NPC is important enough to be linked with many other characters. Relationships crisscross throughout the book, forming intricate webs of duplicity, friendships, and enmity. To get the big picture, to understand all of the ramifications of such a well-connected character's actions, you might have to read a number of other entries. The spotting the links. The See Also section of an NPC's quick chant refers you to all other relevant characters, but when you come across names that pop at the middle of an NPC's entry, remember these guidelines. If an individual named is followed by character information enclosed in parentheses, such as player priest 1, human fighter 4, free league CN, or Pi, he was a human male, level 4 fighter, member of the free league with chaotic neutral as their alignment, it means the only definition that the character has. In other words, he's just a bit player, a minor player, or a major character who's described more fully in another book and doesn't have his own entry within Uncaged. If the individual's name is not followed by parenthetical information, it's meant that he's a major character fully defined in his own entry elsewhere within the book. Using the non-player characters, heck of an intro section, huh? Some of the characters in Uncaged might serve best as single encounters, perhaps to enliven a party's trek through Sigil, or as a quick diversion from the main actions. For example, the Deva called Unity of Rings flies around the cage performing random acts of charity and goodwill, and the Bleaknik artists Morven and Phineas often play their depressing music verse in inappropriate places around town. A number of folks in the book own shops likely to be frequented by adventurers. The frenetic Kesto Bright Eyes runs the Parted Veil, a bookshop of knowledge and propaganda that's open to all. Travelers seeking gate keys should check out the selection at Tivium's Antiquities, a tower crammed with goods and managed by an old tiefling known as Alluvius Ruskin. And a fickle dust mephit known as Seamus Xanthus Zenus sells various animal parts from his shop deep underground. Dungeon Masters can let player characters discover these and other spots as the need arises, or can fix them as established locales well before a party stops for a visit. Many characters in Uncaged offer more intangible services, like Kylie, the tiefling tout who ferries messages and sells information, or Woolly Cupgrass, a buyer or sensate who will identify an unknown potion by tasting it. Word of mouth spreads quickly in Sigil, and player characters will probably hear of such services before they're likely to need them. Capital intrigues. Uncaged features plenty of NPCs who figure prominently into major storylines. Plots that can eventually draw the player characters into their clutches. Some of these storylines include faction conflicts. The Sign of the One and the Athar seem to be heading for a clash, given that the first faction wants to resurrect a dead god, and the other faction wants to stop them. Even worse, the corpse in question is Eoskar, the self-appointed god of portals, who was cast into the astral plane by the Lady of Pain herself. The Athar's own shattered temple used to be dedicated to Eoskar's worshippers. Mind trading. A shadow fiend, fronted by an Asimir, shining child of noble heritage, prowls the crannies of Sigil, looking to capture minds in its dark gems. It's all part of a wild mage's scheme to find a trapped spirit strong enough to win her control of the city. The Blood War. The eternal battle between Batizu and Tanari has spilled out into the lower planes for the last time, at least if a secret cabal of rogue celestials has anything to say about it. Of course, the fact that their plan involves arming the fiends might be giving folks in Sigil cause for concern. For an overall view of the NPCs mired in these and other plot threads, as well as the shopkeep services, providers, and bigwigs featured in Uncaged, please refer to page 125 and 126 of the appendix. Finally, for our video, we get to other references. To play the role of NPCs in Uncaged, DM must have the two basic AD&D rulebooks, the Player's Handbook and the Dungeon Master's Guide. These books describe most of the equipment, spells, and magical items mentioned in these pages. The Planescape campaign setting box set is also required. It explains how to run a campaign and adventures on the plane and introduces the city of Sigil. The rest of the products named in this section are optional, but they'll go a long way towards giving you the most fun and use of Uncaged. First of all, some of the NPCs have mastered spells from the Tome of Magic or possess items described in the volumes of Encyclopedia Magica. If you don't own these books, feel free to substitute spells and magic items from other sources. Many of the NPCs in Uncaged aren't human or even humanoid. Instead, they represent races including Asimon, Fenzir, Tanari, and Yugoloth. If you'd like a more complete explanation of their racial histories, ecologies, and like, please refer to the Monstrous Manual, the Planescape Monstrous Compendium Appendix, the Planescape Monstrous Compendium Appendix 2, and the Monstrous Supplement books in the Planescape campaign setting, Planes of Chaos, Planes of Conflict, and Planes of Law box sets, as noted in the individual entries. Other accessories in the Planescape line provide more details on the number of references made in Uncaged In the Cage, Guide to Sigil lays out the city ward by ward. The Factals Manifesto looks at the secrets of the planar factions, and Well of Worlds gives numerous short adventures and new magical items. Many of the NPCs developed in Uncaged were first mentioned in these other products. Finally, a few of the characters in Uncaged appear in the Planescape adventure Harbinger House and Something Wild, and 4 of the NPCs in this book were first introduced in Dragon Magazine 213. And we're going to end our reading. That was just the introduction. Very informative. Not a lot. I don't have to say a whole lot. This tells us what the book is for, how to use it, how a couple of the examples of the conflicts and the links within, and a big list of other references. Now, I know this is a little bit of commentary as we end this first video. Old D&D, old research, old material, period, relied on footnotes, citations, and things like that. We're going to see a lot of those things pop up in the reading of this. The idea was that you could go and fetch more information if you needed to. You could verify the source of information that you're looking at in this book against another book. Nowadays, we have Wiki, we have Google Foo, we have all of these search engines. We're not as inclined to research backwards. Okay, so if you're into that, all the information will be available. Hopefully you'll enlarge your library and start getting into more content to build your campaign, your D&D campaigns up. If you're not into that, most of what we're going to be looking at is a Google search away anyway. If you want a little bit more, use the wiki, use Google, find out what you want. But yeah, that's going to be the end of this video. Thank you so much for hanging out. Likes, follows, subscribed. Again, we are starting out our next audiobook, Planescape Uncaged, The Faces of Sigil. I appreciate you guys being here. Our next video, we'll get into a character. We'll get into one of the first of 41 non-player characters that this book is all about. So likes, follow, subscribe. Join us on Twitch for live chat, 11 a.m. to 2 p.m., 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. Tuesday through Saturday, Tuesday to Friday. Duh. Push that like, follow, subscribe button. Let me know what you think of these videos as they're coming out. Above all else, thank you so much for your time, and we'll see you soon.